Today we got the top 10 secret levels in games,
tips on how to become a pro Overwatch cosplayer,
we got a review of the Sega Genesis Flashback,
and reveal the secrets of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
This is the IGN Show.
Hey guys, and welcome to the IGN Show. I'm Naomi Kyle, and with me are my co-op partners Alana Pierce and William Haynes. And today we're going to expose the top 10 secret levels in games and tell you which indie titles you need to be playing right meow.
Plus, we'll check out the Sega Genesis Flashback, which jams a bunch of retro games in a small package, kind of like the NES Classic. Then we'll review Sundered, a really cool indie game that has an incredible art style.
And later, we've got you Nintendo fans covered with a review of Overcooked for the Switch and all the hidden things you might have missed in Breath of the Wild. That game is so big, there's no way you found everything.
But first, it's time to talk cosplay as we usually do.
We go to a lot of conventions and see a lot of cosplay, and right now, everyone loves dressing up as their favorite Overwatch characters.
So why not join the club? I've got some tips to get you started.
Thanks in part to its highly addictive gameplay, Overwatch is one of the biggest hits ever. But what makes the game so special is its stable of diverse and unique characters.
I'm not a monkey.
I even decided to cosplay as McCree at Comic-Con, and I wasn't alone.
Now this is what I call squad goals.
So, if you're looking to create your own Overwatch cosplay, here are a couple of things that can get you started.
We have McCree's gun, Reaper's incredibly creepy looking mask, and Tracer's goggles over here. So the particularly cool thing about these is that you can buy them pre-made, but they mostly sell them as kit. My favorite here is obviously Reaper's mask, which is $145 if you buy it raw, and then $195 pre-made. And they are all upwards of $100, but for the quality, I think it's super impressive. I particularly love that McCree's gun, the barrel actually rolls, and this rolls as well. So these are all from Henchman Props. I found them on Instagram. They make some really, really cool stuff to see the progress of as a cosplayer.
If you're looking for a real challenge, I've got something for you. The secret levels that are impossible to find, and in some cases, impossible to beat. Here's our countdown of the top 10 secret levels in games.
Some of our favorite gaming memories are exploring all of a level's nooks and crannies only to find an absolutely crazy hidden area. This list is ranked based upon the quantity and quality of the hidden content, so let's get to it. These are the top 10 secret levels in games. Mile High Club is the perfect exclamation point on the end of Call of Duty 4's fantastic campaign. The brutally hard bonus mission unlocks after campaign completion and drops the player into a frantic firefight to clear out a double-decker airplane. It only lasts an insane 60 seconds on Veteran, requiring near perfection to rescue the VIP and unlock the coveted Mile High Club achievement. The 2014 reboot of Wolfenstein was an awesome new take on the classic, and it scored points through its wonderful nods to the past. At multiple points in the game, your character could take a nap, only to find himself in the midst of a retro nightmare, such a groundbreaking experience. Almost 20 years after its release, Command & Conquer Red Alert's first expansion is more well known for its giant ant secret levels than for the actual expansion itself. And that's how you know you've created an epic secret level. Unlocked by holding down the Shift key and clicking the main menu speaker icon. How do people even discover this stuff? The 4-mission mini-campaign tasks the Allies with taking out an army of giant ants, eventually exterminating the mutant menace once and for all. Few games are as synonymous with their console generation as GoldenEye for the Nintendo 64, so it's no surprise that the awesome Aztec level made it to this list. Based on the classic Bond film Moonraker, Aztec delivers on two fronts. It's the game's toughest single-player level, culminating in a duel against the iconic villain Jaws. And it's also another multiplayer map to add to GoldenEye's stock of unforgettable deathmatch locations. Tucked away deep inside GameCube's awesome Rogue Leader is Triumph of the Empire, a secret level that allows you to replay A New Hope's awesome Death Star battle, but from Darth Vader's perspective. Flying around in the Sith Lord's TIE Advanced and taking down rebel pilots is only trumped by the fact that you can actually change the course of history and destroy the rebellion before it's even had a chance of rising up.
Stick around, because we'll have RPGs 5 through 1 a little later. Ending a countdown at 6 would just be weird.
Just a little bit weird. And coming up, we have reviews of the frantic Overcooked and apocalyptic Sundered.
Plus, a review of the Sega Genesis Flashback and a look at our favorite indie titles out right now. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The NES Classic was a surprise hit last year, and it's no surprise that it's still impossible to find. So maybe you're looking to get a dose of nostalgia from the Sega Genesis Flashback instead? Well, before you do, check out Damon Hatfield's review.
Nintendo certainly caused quite a nostalgia-fueled fervor with last year's NES Classic and upcoming SNES Classic. The Sega Genesis and its incredible game library absolutely deserve their own similar monument to the 16-bit glory days of blast processing. But due to a poisoned, lackluster library, this Sega Genesis Flashback looks poor next to what we've seen of the SNES Classic. Note that this $80 retro console is made by AtGames, not Sega. The Genesis Flashback boasts 85 built-in games, which sounds like a lot. Upon closer inspection, however, you'll find that only 57 of them were actually released on a Sega console. The remaining 28 are bonus games, all but unplayable rip-offs of classics like Space Invaders and Air Hockey. Of the 57 legit games included, only 45 are Sega Genesis games. The rest are a random selection of Master System and Game Gear games. But what about that 45? It's a good number, more than double the SNES Classic's 21, and many of the games here are stone-cold classics. Phantasy Star 4, for instance, might be the best RPG Sega ever made, and it's still fun hacking your way through all 3 Golden Axes with a friend. If you love Sonic, there are 5 of his Genesis games packed in, with another 4 Game Gear outings. As for third-party games, you'll find only Mortal Kombat 1 through 3. That means no system highlights like Gunstar Heroes, Aladdin, Earthworm Jim, Contra Hardcore, or Castlevania Bloodlines. Ironically, even the very cool cinematic platformer Flashback is also not included in the Sega Genesis Flashback. Having spent some time with them, I'd say about 25 of the included 85 games are still really fun to play today. Certain games, like Sonic the Hedgehog 2, don't run as smoothly as they did on the real Genesis. This also applies to any physical Genesis cartridges you dust off and slot into the top of the Flashback, unfortunately. For what it's worth, the Sega Genesis Flashback is very easy to set up, packing just the console, 2 wireless controllers, an AC adapter, and an HDMI cable. You can be up and playing in no time. The console itself is similar in size and shape to the original Genesis without the satisfying weight. This is cheap, hollow plastic. The AAA battery-powered wireless controllers do a serviceable job of controlling the games. The console does include 2 controller ports, so you can plug in actual Sega Genesis 6-button control pads, and I found they work much better than the pack-ins do in the interface, and just feel more satisfying since they're the real deal. We had a couple lying around the IGN office, but not everyone who might bring home the Flashback will be so lucky, unless they're collectors or haven't cleaned out their garages in a few decades. The Sega Genesis Flashback does offer an easy way to revisit a few 16-bit gems, but there have been much more complete Genesis collections that were presented with more polish and smoother, more accurate emulation. This console is also packed with shovelware that has no business in any retro game showcase, seemingly in an effort to pad its number of included games. Sega fans are left waiting for Sega itself to make a worthy Genesis classic someday.
One of the greatest things about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is your ability to experiment in the world. Anything is possible.
And even if you've poured hundreds of hours into a game, you're always going to find new experiences and surprises, like these.
The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is a triumphant achievement in world design and free-form physics-based gameplay. This sandbox world simply sets up the rules and confidently lets creative players bend those rules to their own will. Here are tiny little details that make this vision of Hyrule such a compelling, amazing world to lose ourselves in. You can survive in cold environments without elixirs or warm clothes just by equipping a fire rod or torch. Killing animals in very hot or very cold climates will give you meat that's already cooked or chilled instead of raw meat. You can, very briefly, mount and ride a Lionel, but they won't like it very much. If you drop apples or other food near a bokoblin, they may be distracted by it and run over to eat it. There's custom dialogue for almost everything. Characters even sometimes react differently to specific outfits. If you shoot an electric arrow into a body of water, it will kill all of the fish swimming in that area. If you run out of stamina and you're about to fall to your death, you can fast travel to safety from a mid-air fall. If you hold a cuckoo and trick an enemy into whacking it a few times, the other cuckoos will go crazy and attack them for you. If you crawl into a sleeping Hinox's hand, he'll eventually lift you onto his belly to scratch himself. Then, if you're very careful, you can loot their necklace without having to fight them. Most motion control shrine puzzles can be cheesed by flipping your controller completely upside down. The game recognizes the input and will flip the environment completely upside down too. Bokoblins and moblins can't swim. Push them in the water and let nature take care of the rest. You don't need a Korok leaf to power a raft. Just hop on and use magnesis to push a big metal weapon against it. The raft will move like a motorboat. Those were tiny, magnificent little details that you can find in Breath of the Wild.
Welcome back to the IGN Show. Overcooked is a fast and frantic game where you have to prepare meals under the most hazardous circumstances, and it's one of the best couch co-op experiences out there. It's out now for the Nintendo Switch, and IGN Associate Editor Tom Marks has our review.
A well-played round of Overcooked feels like dancing in a graceful ballet, except missing a step means your burger burns, the kitchen lights on fire, and a raccoon in a wheelchair plummets into a lake of lava. Working with your teammates as a well-oiled machine is as rewarding as it is challenging, even if problems with the Switch port keep the special edition from standing as the definitive version. This local co-op cook-em-up poses the Herculean challenge of asking up to 4 people to work together for a full 3 minutes at a time, performing relatively simple cooking-related actions. One button picks things up, like ingredients or plates, and another chops, cooks, or washes them depending on the station you're standing in front of. Combine those simple controls with cleverly designed levels made to mess with you, and Overcooked becomes blissfully frantic. Overcooked gets more fun the more people you have playing it. It's best with 3 or 4 players and still enjoyable with 2, but playing alone just isn't very fun. It turns into something more like an RTS than a party game and loses most of its lighthearted zaniness. Because of that, it's disappointing that Overcooked doesn't have any online play and doesn't take advantage of the Switch's local wireless multiplayer across consoles. But when you get a team together, it's great. Level design on the more than 40 stages is where Overcooked shines, because every one is tailor-made to disrupt your plans. They push everybody to move around each map instead of just manning a single station. What happens when the pirate ship you're cooking on shifts, the serving tables slide, and suddenly the person washing dishes can't even reach the sink anymore? Those problem-solving moments are exhilarating, forcing me and my teammates to swap roles on the fly without letting everything fall apart. That gets harder as stages start involving jumping between moving trucks or an earthquake literally splitting the kitchen in half. Overcooked's transition to Switch unfortunately introduced a few problems with controller rumble and frame rate I wasn't expecting, the latter of which is particularly glaring. The frame rate is often noticeably low whether the console is docked or not, which can be an annoying distraction in a game that rewards quick and precise movements. But Overcooked is still one of the freshest co-op games I've ever played, and for local multiplayer fun, it's hard to beat.
After the break, we'll be talking indie games and reviewing Sundered, which is pretty much stocked in the technical department. Plus, we still have the top 5 secret levels in games. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the IGN Show. Would you like to play a game that's a mix of Metroid and Castlevania injected with the madness of Cthulhu?
Well, if it's beautifully hand-drawn, otherwise forget it.
Well, you're in luck, because Sundered is just that.
Check out our review.
The Metroidvania genre meets H.P. Lovecraft and Sundered, a tough 2D platformer with roguelike elements and a fantastic hand-drawn art style. Sometimes its randomness threatens to ruin the flow, but romping through this underworld is a worthy challenge. Wisely, Sundered focuses more on mood than on exposition. After all, action and exploration are the true emphasis here. You spend most of your time unlocking shortcuts and new areas with the help of satisfying toys you discover, like gravity boots, a grappling hook, and a massive energy gun. Its 3 main zones have widely different personalities, such as an underground research facility and a cathedral where the wind tries to whip you away. The randomness enhances Sundered in other ways though, such as how hordes of enemies can pop up at almost any moment and prompt adrenaline-fueled battles. Moments like these make Sundered really tough at first. In fact, one of the neat quirks of Sundered is that death isn't all that discouraging. Death allows you to upgrade your character at the hub's sprawling ability tree, and thus each attempt becomes a tad easier than the last. It's an attractive concept, and Sundered further teases your frustrations by giving you the choice of consuming the Elder Shards dropped by Sundered's bosses to become more powerful at the cost of a darker ending. I might try for the best ending someday, but I think I need a break after the roughly 17 hours of madness for the first one.
Game studios spend tens or sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars on a AAA game, but a big budget is far from the only thing that makes a game fun.
There's a whole world of indie games out there with a much smaller budget and huge ideas that are totally worth checking out.
So what indie games have you been playing recently?
To the Moon, actually. It's an older game, but it came out recently on mobile devices. It is an adventure RPG, so you're going to do a little bit of exploring and a little bit of puzzle solving. So it's about these 2 doctors who go into a dying man's memories and kind of grant his wish. So in this world, when you're dying, you can request people to change your memories to fulfill something. And this man wants to go to the moon, and kind of exploring that and why he wants to go, and regrets about his late wife and just his life in general. What about you? What do you want to recommend?
So I have been playing a lot of Foxhole. It's totally different. There is no narrative except for the one you make. It is a World War II MMO. It's isometric. There's a focus on crafting, on logistics, and on combat. And all that stuff is done by players. So you come in, you build scrap, you build forts, you build vehicles and weapons, and then you take those weapons onto the front and fight the opposing force in kind of an ongoing, persistent war.
So those are 2 indie games we highly recommend, and we hope you check them out. Coming up, we take the top 5 most super duper top secret levels in video games and expose them to the world.
So next year, we'll have to burn that list and start all over. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the IGN Show. Thanks to the internet, streamers, and people reading the code in video games, it's hard to keep a secret anymore. But even if you know about the top 5 secret levels of all time, you're going to have to work hard just to play them yourself.
After rumors of a secret cow level in the original Diablo proved false, cemented even with StarCraft's There Is No Cow level cheat command, Diablo 2 actually did it. Diablo 2's secret cow level would be quite the bizarre find to anyone who managed to coincidentally meet the right circumstances for it, but for most die-hard Diablo fans, it was the long-awaited prize fueled by a few years' worth of inside jokes. Cave Story's secret level is a vicious, narrow gauntlet of death traps and enemies that tests every platforming skill you've accumulated on your long underground odyssey. Contrary to most of the rest of Cave Story's exploratory design, Cave Story is a single, straightforward corridor culminating in a secret final boss. Secrets are the lifeblood of Dark Souls, and the first game's painted world of Ariamis is as elusive and obscure as it gets. It's an entire level, and a tough one too, complete with a mini-boss and optional first boss, tons of valuable items, and one of the weirdest armor sets in the game. Super Mario World doubled down on the secret-rich legacy of its 8-bit forerunners, cramming its huge stages with concealed shortcuts and exits. Finding these exits unlocked yet another layer of hidden stages, the Special World, which in turn demanded tremendous platforming skills. Castlevania Symphony of the Night is arguably the most secret-rich of console games, so committed to rewarding explorers that it conceals half its content behind an obscure series of easily overlooked gates. This is no mere reskinned secondary quest either. It's crammed with unique weapons, items, enemies, original music, and bosses. The sheer scale and grandeur of the inverted castle makes it an easy pick for the greatest hidden level of them all.
There were some really cool ones there. The Castlevania was actually kind of impressive. What about you guys? What are some of your favorites?
One of my favorites is in Kingdom Hearts when you can fight Sephiroth. I myself never did it because I was too scared. I didn't want to see my guy get beat up that much, but I like the fact that you could fight somebody from a different game with a way bigger sword than you. It's brilliant.
It's like an insane secret boss.
Yeah.
And it's a super hard fight too.
Yeah.
Really hard. But mine is actually kind of basic. It's when you walk inside the castle in Super Mario 64 and there's the ray of light beaming down for the first time. You look up into it, and I think that's the first time that you use the flying cat. When I played that the first time, it just blew my mind.
All right, well, good luck finding all those secret levels, guys. On the next episode of the IGN Show, we've got exclusive gameplay from Assassin's Creed Origins.
Plus, we'll count down the top 10 worst weapons in video game history. So many disappointments.
Really are. And we'll crack open the database of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Find out how long people survive, how far they run, and how many chicken dinners have been awarded so far.
That does it for us today. We are out of here.
Remember to keep it locked to IGN.
Thank you for watching. Stole my line.
I'm sorry.
That was my line.
I wanted to say it too.